CNBC-TV18 Zetwerk Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024.
Well, next up we have an interesting fireside chat on how we can boost the innovation in the manufacturing sector. And well, to moderate this session we have with us Parikshit, and joining him on the stage is Niranjan Gupta, CEO, Hero Motorcorp. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
Niranjan, thank you very much. It's great to have you here. Let me begin by asking you, what does smart manufacturing really begin to you or mean to you?
Thanks, Parikshit, for having me here. I'll have a bit of a wider take on smart manufacturing. The way we look at it for future, and I would break it down a bit. S would mean safe and sustainable. M would mean make in India. A would be AI and digitally enabled. R, of course, is resilient and responsive supply chain. And T, I would call is TCO, which is total cost of operation, not just the cost the way we calculate. And I think here the finance fraternity has got some work to do, because how do you calculate the cost of complexity, the cost of employee morale, the motivation, everything has to be included. So that would be the definition of smart.
Now, speaking about AI and innovation, how are you investing in this? How much are you going to be investing in getting a workforce which can support your AI push?
If you compare 2 years back versus our next year's plan, which is just a period of 3 years, the whole CapEx and OpEx on the entire digital and AI field is actually doubling. So it's doubling from what used to be around a 250 crores budget to almost 500 crores budget. So because we are, Parikshit, as I spoke to you earlier as well, the key focus on our allocation of spends is more and more towards premium, towards EV, and towards digital and AI. Those are 3 areas of focus where actually disproportionate portion of the spends, CapEx, OpEx, manpower, everything is going into that.
Niranjan, but any final thought that you'd like to leave us with? Any kind of one policy area where the government could work on, which the industry needs to keep in mind for the future? I'd like to leave it to you. Give us final thoughts.
Oh, thanks, Parikshit. I would say the government is already laying down a lot of policies in that space. What industry wants is stability and continuity of policies. Stability, predictability, and continuity. I think any policy should have these 3 features. As long as it's 3 is there, industry can chart out their roadmap. So I won't list out any demand, and I would just go back to the definition of smart, which is safe, sustainable, make in India, AI, digital enabled, resilient, responsive, and TCO focused. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Niranjan. It was fantastic talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Parikshit.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our first panel discussion, which is titled Green and Smart Transforming India with Renewable Energy. And to steer us through this thought-provoking conversation, I'd like to invite on stage Mridu Bhandari. She's the editor, Special Projects for Network 18, to moderate the session.
Thank you very much for joining us here, gentlemen. And Sandeep, if I can begin with you, let's get an overview of things that are going on in different segments of the renewable energy space. And as far as NHPC is concerned, how are you envisioning India's green energy transition? And particularly, what is the role that smart technologies are playing in boosting efficiencies, boosting productivity in your green energy projects?
We are on a mission here, as said by our Honorable Prime Minister, 500 gigawatt by 2030. It's an ambitious target, but we are on track. A lot has been achieved. Much more needs to be achieved. But yes, as NHPC and as PSUs, we all are contributing our bit into it. And we have been allotted, means each one of us this year, 10,000 gigawatt through REIA mode. Most of the PSUs have been taken on board, particularly this year. Many of them have been given 10 gigawatt target. And fortunately, out of that 10 gigawatt, which was recently allotted, we have already started work on 4,000. Next 6,000 is on track.
Let's bring in the solar players. Anurag, if I can come to you first. At the moment, solar energy does actually account for nearly half of India's renewable energy capacity. And as this capacity grows, what do you think will be the key factors that will define India's energy mix, the renewable energy mix? And how big do you reckon the share of solar will get in the future?
Solar actually contributed 45% to the energy mix which was added last year, which is a great news, despite the fact that, last year what we know, solar as such was added to the grid lower than 2022, but it still contributed 45% of the mix. So I think this is a great news that, solar, which is becoming now very affordable, with a lot of manufacturing getting added in India, and overall the silicon prices becoming so affordable. I think solar or as such renewable, what we want to achieve by 2030 is something we can now achieve, because manufacturing is now all geared up as far as manufacturing is concerned to achieve these kind of goals.
Absolutely true. And let's also talk about the cost of solar. And Sabyasachi, over the last decade, the cost of producing solar energy has actually gone down by nearly 80%, and that's been a huge shift, making it much more commercially viable than it was when we started out. Do you think we are at full optimization of costs at this point?
No,
or what is the next frontier or the next breakthrough that we will see in more further economization of solar?
Yeah, so firstly, I don't think we have reached the bottom point as yet. And you will know that it isn't just about cost coming down. Even the price is also, it's extremely competitive. I come from another industry, by the way, right? So I come from the digital world, who has come here to transform the industry through my company. So, and I've seen that, what we can do. So coming from that industry, my straightaway one-word answer that next frontier is innovation, right? Cost cannot be the only play.
Well, any renewable energy conversation cannot really be complete without talking about green hydrogen, the relatively new kid on the block, but the new kid that has also got a 600 crore corpus in the recent interim budget. And by when do you see green hydrogen becoming commercially viable? Is it likely to go the solar way, take a decade or more? Or what's the timeline you're putting to it, Shaji?
Great, thank you. That's a great question, because the question which we have been searching 15 years back in the solar industry. When we started in 2008-9, it was 20 rupees per unit. And when we used to buy electricity at home at 3-4 rupees. So question was that, will we reach there any time? And today what we are seeing is solar reaching 2.5 rupees per unit, right? And believe me, green hydrogen is going the same route. Today, you need $4 to $6 per kg of hydrogen when you produce it through green hydrogen route, which is like compared to conventional hydrogen production, which is $2.5. That's the gap we are talking, $2.5 to $4 to $6. And I believe that it will take 5 to 8 years to beat that $2.5 very easily. There are a few things to be done for which government has, like you told, allocated some funds to kickstart the industry. That's the best government can do to stimulate the industry. There is a good amount of attraction of the bidders in terms of who want to produce green hydrogen. And now we are coming up with a tender which is going to attract the bidders who will want to offtake the hydrogen. I think this is a good moment to bring the demand supply together, right? That is only going to drive down the cost of hydrogen.
Srinath, we are here at the Smart Manufacturing Summit, and it's all about digital transformation. It's about switching to smarter energy management as well. How do you think Indian businesses are faring on that front currently? Are we reducing and optimizing power enough, or at least taking that into account for our future plans enough at this point at a boardroom level?
Yeah, I think today the capex to opex math for private enterprises, particularly in the commercial and industrial segment, is working out, right? So that is why we see a lot of investments in rooftop, in captive, and also into smarter energy management systems, and that's on the rise. And of course, Government of India is also rapidly investing in smart metering as an initiative. So reducing all of this basically means reducing transmission and distribution losses, and so hence people are not paying for an inefficiency, and which means better return on capital employed. So there is definitive savings. There is definitive value add in terms of capex to opex cost reduction, and that is why we are seeing the private sector rapidly investing.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here today and sharing your incredible insights.
CNBC-TV18 Zetwerk Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024.
For our next panel titled Guardians of the Nation, Strengthening India's Aerospace and Defence Sectors. And to steer us through this inspiring conversation, we have with us Parikshit Luthra.
Okay, let me kick this off by speaking to Air Chief Marshal RKS Bhaduria. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Give us a sense of the journey you've seen in the Air Force over the last 30 to 40 years when it comes to indigenization. Where are we with that indigenization journey right now, and how critical is the need today?
In 60s and 70s, when we came up with Maruth, if I have to take one example, it was absolute state of the art that time, and ahead of its time in basic design and capability. And somewhere down the line, we lost our way, and we totally almost became import dependent. And I've seen a total resurgence in the last about 20 years. So indigenization-wise, I think from aviation perspective, military aviation, we are in a good space today.
Dr. Menon, that is what we were speaking about, that we need faster turnaround times, and that's something the DRDO is trying to do. But for the layman, could you explain to us, when you speak about airborne surveillance systems like the Netra, tell us how they have supported some of our most sensitive and critical military operations in the last 5 years?
Yes, Netra has been a very successful story, and it has not been developed by DRDO alone. The whole nation was behind. It has been fully with the guidance and support of Air Force, who projected the requirement. They had the belief in us that indigenously we can develop, and we delivered. And it is the first time that such a system was getting, certified within the country, with all the work centers, the participating labs, the MSMEs, DGAQA, and Air Force have together worked to see that such a system is actually available for the country.
Mr. Bhatia, if I could ask you, and if you can wear your SIDM hat, what kind of collaboration do you envisage between DRDO and the private sector to somehow speed up things for our defense needs?
Previously, some years ago, DRDO used to be more like passing on bits and pieces of a program to the various industry elements. But over the last few years, they started with a new model, which she also mentioned, which is called DCPP, which means Development Cum Production Partner. So here, an industry joins hands with the DRDO right up front, and then is a partner to the development, and then is a natural production partner when the product comes through. One of the, I think the most prominent example of this would be the ATACS, Advanced Towed Artillery Gun System, where DRDO ab initio, right at the start of the program in 2015, joined hands with two large Indian companies, Tata's and Kalyani Group, and the product was realized in less than 2 years' time.
Air Vice Marshal Fernandez, let me ask you about Lockheed Martin. You're heading operations for them here in India. This is the biggest manufacturer of defense systems in the world. How do you see India as a manufacturing destination for the future?
I think Lockheed Martin in 2010, much before Make in India even was thought of or anything, decided to come to India. And they saw India as a very, very promising place to put work into. FDIs were challenging. They weren't at the 74% that we have today. They were minuscule. There was not much skill level in India at that time, but still Lockheed Martin threw in the hat. So we have two JVs, Tata Lockheed Martin and Tata Sikorsky in Hyderabad. And from 2010 to now, we have about 1,100 workers, many of them in TLM all women. So we are quite sure India's a good place to be in. It's a lovely place to put in work. I see this close cooperation only helping us go forward in a big way.
Ashish, if I can get you in at this stage. As we were hearing from Air Vice Marshal Fernandez a short while back, they've put in a lot in terms of skilling the workforce. Does that become a hindrance sometimes in expanding the footprint in India?
The short answer is no. We see India has a gold mine of talent. A few stats, right? Last year, we completed 70 years in India. Now, our footprint, I mean, obviously, it expands across 7 cities, 2 joint ventures, 2 very large engineering centers that do some incredibly state-of-the-art development here, including cybersecurity, FPGA. We are actually one of the centers of excellence for Thales for the world for FPGA. We do open hardware research in India. Again, one of a few firms. We are actually doing funded research in India, which we pioneer across the world. So Thales is one of the companies that's actually championing the open hardware research for the world. Now, all these require substantial amount of skills. But what we found in India was that, number one, access to talent, and number 2 is the ability to train and deploy the talent. I mean, we literally give ourselves 150 days from bringing someone on board to the point where he or she is, productive, delivering research, delivering to our expectations in terms of avionics, human-machine interface. So we do some really cutting-edge work here. But for us, it's always been a gold mine of talent.
Vishal, to get you in right now, give us your aspiration as a startup in terms of manufacturing, in terms of contributing to defense manufacturing, and how easy is it for companies like yours to get your foot in the door as far as government schemes go?
It's very exciting time for private industry in the aerospace and defense space right now. The scale of upgradation and modernization that's happening, or that has sort of, that train has just left the station. That scale is like huge and massive scale. And private industries can really help in complementing the established DPSU capacities which are there in the market. Recently, the Raksha Mantri announced a production target in a short term of about 3 lakh crores, 50,000 crores of which needs to be made for the world, made in India for the world. So private industry are in a very sweet spot today in complementing the existing capacities with the DPSUs and the organizations like DRDO today. Number 2 is the buzzword is also transfer of technology, getting some of these foreign technology into India, ruggedize it, contemporize it to the Indian context, and provide service reliably to some of these equipment over the life cycle of these equipment, which can happen if that capability resides within the country. So we are very excited at the prospects of this industry right now, and we're very happy to be doing what we are doing.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We've completely run out of time, but thank you very much for giving us a roadmap on the defense industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, next up, we have a fireside chat on building for the future policy insights for next-gen manufacturing, where we discuss how policy interventions can push the manufacturing growth engine in the country. And to moderate this session, may I please invite back on stage CNBC-TV18's Parikshit Luthra in conversation with Dr. Arunish Chawla, Secretary, Department of Pharmaceuticals, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers.
Let me straight away go across to Mr. Chawla, our Pharmaceutical Secretary. And sir, we believe there has been a lot of activity in the last few days in the pharmaceutical space, especially as a result of the PLI. Are you expecting some announcements in the next few days on new greenfield projects?
Yes, announcement and a big one. We are going to, the Honorable Minister is going to inaugurate 40 greenfield plants manufacturing bulk drugs and medical devices. A lot of hard work has gone into it. The initial skepticism is being proved wrong. The PLI is changing the Indian landscape in a big way.
I'd also like to ask you, what are some of the companies who will be involved in this exercise? Could you give us some of the big names? What is the total investment that you're expecting to draw as a result of this exercise?
The good news is that both Indian and multinational companies are part of this scheme, part of this program. And Indian companies include all the big ones, which manufacture drugs and formulations. They are now deepening the value chain. They're now entering into a bulk drug production. something, we had lost to some other countries and were importing for a long time. And we realized it soon enough. And 5 years hard work has brought us here.
And finally, sir, sustainability has been a big theme for manufacturing discourse over the few years. And it's going to be even more important considering our goals at COP. What are the kind of sustainable practices that you have been urging the pharma industry to adopt in your daily conversations, in your stakeholder consultations?
As I said, quality is one, innovation is another, putting money back in R&D where it is necessary, helping startups grow and become big, and taking more ideas from the valley of death to clinical trials, to commercialization, and nudging the academia, particularly our new institutes and the NIPERs that are coming up, to generate more patents, generate more intellectual property, so that any dimension in which we have a gap with the leading economies, we cover up, we leapfrog, and we overtake them.
All right, Mr. Chawla, thank you so much for joining us, giving your vision for the pharmaceutical industry. Great to hear about the 40 new greenfield plants in the pharma sector, the medical devices sector, which will be announced this week. And I think our audience loved that announcement. The industry will cheer as well. Great to hear about all the reforms that you're working on for the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
CNBC-TV18 Zetwerk Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024.